Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our virtual event. Today's event is focused on family consumer sciences. Our event is titled The Importance of Play in Student Learning and Development. Today, we are going to present to you two different informational pieces that we received from our cohorts across the state. We were given information by two separate preschools. One preschool is in the North Union Community School District, and our other preschool was an in-home daycare. We will begin with one video by Amy Preston. She is the preschool teacher at North Union Community School. After that, we will transition on to our second video provided by Katie Jensen, who is our in-home daycare provider. And then following that, we will be finishing up our session with a Q&A by Debbie Pryor, who is an early childhood educator at Iowa Western Community College. So getting started with our Why Play is Essential in Preschool. Let's see here, one moment, guys. It looks like we are not having any sound, so give me 1 second here.
Planning. Hey, I'm Amy Preston. I am the preschool teacher at North Union. I'm going to talk about my centers a little bit and what students might learn there. I change out my center toys every 2 weeks to keep the interest and to put out different items to help me collect data that week. This is our block center. I always have blocks out, but I might change out the other toys to animals, playhouse, people, barn, trains. This is a popular center. Students learn to interact and share with materials. They get both gross and fine motor skills with hand-eye coordination. Blocks promote concrete understanding of concepts for critical thinking, planning, and making decisions. These are my toys and games. I have them both at tables and at the block center, or at the carpet. Students learn to cooperate with each other and develop confidence. They get both fine and gross motor skills when stringing beads, doing puzzles, connecting manipulatives. They use problem-solving skills when things don't go right. This is our classroom library. I try to make sure I have a mixture of fiction and nonfiction books, a lot of books that go with our projects. I have storytelling props to encourage them to recall or retell stories themselves. Books promote social emotional skills that the students can relate to stories. They learn how to manipulate books, understanding print concepts, vocabulary, and language skills. They learn literacy, reading, writing, listening. They learn a lot at the library. This is our art center. This is a great way for students to express their feelings. Of course, they get a lot of fine motor skills when they cut, rip, trace, etc. At the easel, they get some gross motor skills when they have to write up at an angle. Students learn planning and carrying out problem solving through trial and error at the block center, or at the art center, sorry. This is our dramatic play. Right now it's a fire station, but it also is a grocery store, restaurant, doctor's office, ice cream shop. We change it quite often. Students recreate life experiences, learn about roles in the community while interacting with their peers. They get some fine motor skills when they have to manipulate zippers and buttons for dress up. They also get lots of writing or grocery store lids, doctor's office, those kind of things. Students develop symbolic thinking and problem-solving skills of dramatic play. Music and movement. I'm very fortunate I have this large room. Some preschools probably won't have this. But this is where we sing and dance a lot. Songs bring out feelings that make them feel like part of the group. Students use both gross and fine motor skills in movements while we are acting out our songs. They create patterns with words and hear them when using rhyming. They also get symbolic thinking when they're pretending to be different things and learn songs and movement. This is a discovery center. There's another center I change quite often. It usually is a table where we collect all of our project work, things that they can investigate to learn more about. Students learn to work together and explore. They use lots of fine motor skills when manipulating items and using tweezers. Students observe and ask questions and use problem-solving skills when they explore. I also have our sand and water table near our discovery, but we couldn't have that out due to COVID. At every center, we always have books and clipboards for writing to promote those skills. Most of my data collecting on standards is collected at center time when they are playing, and I can keep their interest and ask them questions. It's just a huge part of learning in preschool.
Okay, that was our first presentation. Our second presentation will be provided to us by Katie Jensen. Katie is an in-home daycare provider out of Armstrong, Iowa. While viewing the second presentation, if you have any questions for Debbie Pryor, our educator specialist, who will be joining us here in just a few moments, feel free to put those in the chat box.
Using play to teach children in a child care setting. There are 10 objectives for children's learning when planning activities for them. They include social, emotional, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, mathematics, science and technology, social studies, the arts, and English language acquisition. Now I would like to show you a couple easy activities for children to meet these objectives. The first one we're going to start with is ice cube paint. The supplies needed for this are probably stuff that you already have at your house. They include an ice cube tray, water, food coloring, popsicle sticks, or toothpicks will work just as well. As an adult, go ahead and fill the ice cube tray with water. Be sure not to overfill it, otherwise when the children put their colors in, everything's going to mix together. Next, go ahead and let the children help you by putting a drop of food coloring in each compartment to make the colors. Go ahead and let them mix colors together. If they want to put blue and red together, let them put it together. This is partially a science experiment. By them doing that, they'll find out that that's going to make a different color. It's going to make purple. Once you have each compartment colored, place a popsicle stick or a toothpick, whichever you had, in each compartment and put them in the freezer until they're frozen solid. Once they're frozen, take them out and you're ready to paint. What did children learn by this activity? Social emotional. Children had to each take a turn to make the paint color they wanted. Physical. Children used their fine motor skills to hold the popsicle stick to paint once the paint was ready. They also had to use fine motor skills to squeeze the food coloring to make it come out of the tube. Language. Children had to follow directions given and use their vocabulary to talk with their peers if they wanted a color of paint that was being used by another friend. Cognitive. Since this was a two-part activity, the making the paint was one part and then painting was another part. Children had to participate and engage in the process of making the paint to be able to paint afterwards. Science and technology. While doing this project, we talked about the physical state of water when we started and how having it in the freezer changed it into a solid state afterwards. The art, children were able to create a rainbow out of the paints in whatever color order they wanted. The next activity we're going to talk about also has stuff you probably have right in your house. Practicing phone numbers. As adults, we don't really think about it because we just go to our phone and you see that name and you click on it and you call them. Well, children sometimes might be at home alone and they may not have a cell phone. They may only have a landline. So we still need to be able to teach them how to use a keypad on a phone to type in the number that they need to call. For supplies, all you need are paper plates, a permanent marker, and masking tape. Process, go ahead and write the numbers out just as you would find them on the keypad of a phone, including the star and the pound symbol. If you have older children participating in this activity, like I did for the day, go ahead and let them help you write out the numbers. It's good for their mathematics skills to be able to write these out. Once your numbers are written, go ahead and tape them to the wall. You have to have a fairly large space because once again, you want to have them spread out just like they would appear on a phone keypad. And then you're ready to let the children explore with it. What were the children able to learn from this activity? This was really a great activity to be able to see the older children get involved with the younger children. Because clearly a toddler, they're going to have a hard time identifying the numbers yet. So the older children were able to go in and help them count. Say, this is 1, 2, help them count through to get to the number that they needed. And that was really great to see. Language. This activity was full of language as the children interacted back and forth, telling me their parents' numbers and then saying them as they pushed each number. It's also great that children nowadays still do know their parents' number instead of just knowing it as mom in their phone. Cognitive. This was a harder activity for the younger children, but they had to use their thinking skills like I talked about earlier and figure out that if they started with the first paper plate and they could count over and across and then go down, they were able to get to the number that I had asked them to find. Mathematics, children had to count and also connect the number they said with that numeral. The last activity I would like to talk about is called a Pumpkin Day Mouse. We just called it that because that's the name of the book that we read. So you'll need the book, it's Pumpkin Day Mouse, a cardboard egg carton, and once you have that, go ahead and cut out just where each individual egg would fit, orange paint, paintbrushes, green pipe cleaner, and a black Sharpie marker. Go ahead and read the book together as a group and discuss it as you're reading it. This book does a really good job of showing a few of the basic emotions in a simple way for toddlers and even older children to understand. As you're reading it, discuss them. Talk about what makes the child feel happy, what makes you feel sad, what makes you feel scared, what makes them feel angry. Talk about them. Then let each child paint their egg carton with orange paint and decide what emotion they want their pumpkin to have. And with the help of an adult, if you have older children, go ahead and let them draw themselves, draw the face on the egg carton, and then place the stem on the top of their pumpkin with your green pipe cleaner. What did children learn from this activity? This is a huge activity for social and emotional. Not only for children to be able to recognize those emotions, but to be able to talk about those emotions was also very big. The children interacted with their peers during this activity, talking about what made them feel a certain emotion, whether it made them be happy that they were able to get to be the line leader, or whether it made them sad because somebody took a toy away from them. Physical, children had to use their fine motor skills to hold a paintbrush while painting. Language, children, while reading this book, they engaged in conversation about what they were seeing in each of the pictures. Literacy, each child's interaction and conversations during the read aloud was a great way for me to see as their educator what they knew about each emotion. In closing this presentation, I just want to say that the most important thing when planning an activity for children of any age is to make sure that the activity is fun. We discussed most of the objectives that were met during each activity, but if you go back to each of the activities, I'm sure you can find that all of the objectives will fit into each activity in some shape or form. Children learn through their experiences and interactions with others. The more we allow them to do this, the more they will thrive and grow in all developmental areas.
Okay, so as you can see from our two videos, we have two different versions of how children learn through play. In our first video, we saw the environment in which a typical public school student may be in. Obviously, with COVID-19, things may look a little bit different this year. And then we also saw the environment of an in-home daycare. So we still have the same educational goals and outcomes, but they may look just a little bit different. Continuing on with our presentation today, I'm going to introduce Debbie Pryor. Debbie is one of the educational specialists here on campus at Iowa Western. And Debbie, if you could just give a little bit of background about yourself, that would be wonderful.
Thank you for having me today. I have been here teaching in early childhood education at Iowa Western for about 20 years, honestly. I came in part-time as an adjunct lab instructor, and I've held various hats while I'm here. Currently, I am teaching preschool and working as a lab instructor. Sadly, we don't have students in our lab school this year due to COVID, so we've been doing some online opportunities with them. And I also do some administrative work to support the center itself.
Thank you for joining us today, Debbie. It's wonderful to have you on the call. I'm going to get started with a couple questions that we have. As we go on, if anybody else has additional questions for Debbie, feel free to put those in the chat box. So our first question today is, how does learning through play change as a child grows older? Say, for example, a 3-year-old versus a 6-year-old.
Yeah, one of the things I think of first is the 3-year-old is going to be far more concrete than a 6-year-old. Things are going to be very black and white. They're going to take things very literal. If you're trying to joke around with a 3-year-old, they may not understand that like a 6-year-old would be able to. So definitely understanding that, and there's variance just in individual development among 3-year-olds even. You may have a 3-year-old that may really be challenged by some social, problem solving, things like that. And you may have a 3-year-old that's guiding problem solving. So they're going to be, while there are age norms, they are going to be a little bit different within that age too. So, and also those social emotional skills at 3, they're still very egocentric, thinking only about themselves and their own feelings and the world that's immediately around them. And as they grow older, they're able to think, how would somebody else might feel, and expand that community even beyond their classroom when you start, looking at kindergarten and the lower elementary grades.
Okay, great. Our first question in the chat box is, what experiences would you recommend for high school students to take or receive while they're still in high school if they're interested in early childhood education as a career?
I would encourage you to look for volunteer opportunities where you can go in and assist with some group learning types of activities. Babysitting is always great if you can get, working with the age group that you like, but also look at some different age groups within a family, or if it's a group situation. You could also talk to some local centers. I know that we have had high school students that come in and put in volunteer hours in the past. So there are some opportunities that the more you can get in there and get your hands on those learning opportunities and experience them with the kids. I mean, try and sample some things at home even when you're at home. I wonder what this would be like. Try some simple science experiments, and if you can find an environment to practice some of those things, that would be optimal.
All right, great. Can you give examples of ways children learn social cues through play?
Social cues through play. Sadly, one of my favorite areas where they learn social cues is not available right now because of COVID, and that's at the sensory table. Because you have usually groups of 4 to sometimes 6 children sharing a space and sharing supplies. And there's so much social learning going on at that time, because not only are they having to organize their space around them and how much room do I need versus my friend beside me, or how many items do I have and how many items do my friend have? Do I need to share these? Do I not? Well, they want to play this way, but I have this idea. So there's so much sharing going on in, at the sensory table. Another area is the block area, because it's such a wide space. Children can get into some big groups of play. Dramatic play in the house area is another area. A lot of strong social skills going on in there. They're trying on different roles often too, whether they're pretending with, animals or people in the block area, or they're actually dressing up in the dramatic play area, and they're deciding what role they're going to play in that area.
Lots of great learning going on through play. Our next question: what career options are available for students that pursue a career with an early childhood education degree?
Well, obviously, working in a child care center or some type of child care environment, either your business on your own in your home, or starting, a center, working for a larger center. Also in the public schools now, there's a lot of, I would say most public schools have early childhood opportunities. Head Start is another place. If you're crossing the river in Nebraska, EduCare is a great place to take your degree. And if you want to continue on beyond an associate's degree or a certificate, opportunities just to keep increasing as far as kindergarten teaching, and some of those lower elementary grades really look highly on that early childhood background. There's things in the medical setting that you can do with an early childhood background. Things with social areas or mental health areas also is increasing more and more with early childhood field.
Okay. Our next question is with regards to toys in the center. How often are activities or toys changed out?
That's kind of a tough question, because sometimes it's really relevant to your own classroom and the children that you're serving at that time. I mean, you might have a high interest item that you have in there for a month because they're just so engaged, and it's still a high interest. It's still relevant to what they're learning, especially if you're into doing a study of something in particular that the kids are diving in deep to. You may have things in your room a little bit longer. If you find that, there's not much interest in this center or this area that we're playing with, you might want to change it out after a couple days, or add some things to it and change it up. I like to ask the children too, because they will bring a lot of knowledge into what they're interested in and kind of follow their lead that way.
Great. Yeah, they definitely will tell you if they like something or don't like it, don't they?
They will.
All right. And then one more question. How has COVID-19 changed the way that preschoolers interact with one another?
Well, I have to tell you, I applaud early childhood educators, especially child care centers that have remained open throughout all of COVID, because honestly, there haven't been a lot of real distinct guidelines given to early childhood educators early on in this. So they've figured out a lot of things on their own, and they're doing a very good job. There was a study that just came out, and they're saying at this point in time, there's not a great increase of exposure for early childhood educators over other areas where you're working. So we're doing a good job. Lots of extra sanitizing in your classroom, even throughout the day. Lots of hand washing yourself and the children. We're always hand washing. Fewer toys out because of the high need to sanitize. It's easier to rotate than to have everything out at once. Like we mentioned, and one of the videos mentioned also, we've taken things out like the sensory table, because if you're having water or sand play and they're all together, you're kind of making a great area for germs to kind of grow in there. So we've excluded some of those things. There are some centers and preschools that are masking and some that aren't. So there's some variance that way. Most of the teachers that I've talked to are masking, but there are still some areas where they aren't. They're in the children's classroom because of concerns of language and hearing and seeing your face when you're speaking. And, you know, so a lot of problem solving for teachers in that regard, that they're taking on these challenges. I think they're succeeding. They're doing a good job.
Definitely. There's lots of new challenges, and our teachers are doing the best job that they can in the situation that we're in. And our students are, I know I see lots of little ones coming out of the early childhood center when I'm coming and going, and they all look so excited to be there. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, they take it all in stride, actually. I'm very impressed with young children are resilient. We've known they're resilient for years. And some of that is also how the teachers' attitudes are and what they're experiencing at home, the language that they're hearing at home, how parents are managing their own mental health in regard to COVID and practices that maybe they're changing in their home. So the children are doing very well.
Wonderful. All right, so we are going to wrap up our session today. Debbie, thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful to get a chat with you a little bit.
Thank you.
Also, thank you to our presenters, Amy and Katie. With finishing up, we have one more slide to share, and that is our survey. So as people are kind of wrapping up today, we would implore you to please take our survey. We have an educator survey and a student survey. This information will help us out greatly with information for events to come. Also, be sure to check out iowain.org to find out more information for other opportunities that are going to be available coming up this spring and the rest of the fall. If you guys have any additional questions, please leave them in the chat box and we will get those answered and sent out to you via email. Otherwise, thank you guys all so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have everyone.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. We got everybody out. Awesome. Okay.